I don't think I've ever lost a game where I did that turn 1. Hey guys, it's Caban from True Champion Gaming. Just recently got top 4 in the Florida Regionals by Haven Gaming. Really excellent event. Was really awesome to meet so many people there. I appreciate everyone that had some nice things to say about the channel and everything. And just was really cool to get to finally really interact with the community. Really looking forward to Ascent and any other of the Australian regionals and stuff that I'll be attending soon as well. So anyways, let's get right into it. This is a deck list that is pretty unique. It does base its skeleton kind of off of like normal wind tribal Lorraine list, but definitely is different. I did play the mirror match actually compared to a normal wind Lorraine list tribal version, and definitely felt like I had the upper edge there. So that's kind of like a big reason why I like the deck, is that even against a deck that is similar, you still kind of feel like you have the advantage. The main reason that I picked the deck was because I felt like it had a really good spread of matchups, and that felt like it held up at Florida. So we have Spirit of Wind because we are Wind Lorraine. We also have level 1 Lorraine, and we do run level 2. We do not run level 3. So with level 1 Lorraine, you're going to have 3 options to bring out, and that is Sword of Seeking, Ornamental Greatsword, and Sword of Adversity. Now, these are basically like in the order that you might bring them out. You're usually going to bring out Sword of Seeking if you have Lorraine level 1, and I have even gone into this before going into level 1, depending on if I have a really specific hand. Ornamental, you're actually going to kind of want to only bring out when you're going to plan to do a second wind turn. Giving something +1 from Ornamental and then also giving something +1 from second wind while restanding it can really start to stack up the damage fast. So you'll get, like, it's wise to hold this until you know you're going to use second wind to really get the advantage out of that +1 attack. Then we also have Sword of Adversity. This is really good if you're in like kind of that Wind Lorraine mirror match or Fire Lorraine mirror match where they sweep your board maybe and you weren't able to protect it all, so your allies got swept, and then you just bring out Sword of Adversity and you sweep them back and kind of do all that shenanigans. So, or even if you're just kind of pushing face and trying to close out the game and they clear your board, Sword of Adversity can just be that 2 damage to face that can push you over and win you the game. Then we have the level 2 Lorraine. I honestly don't even go into this that much. I've won some games as a Spirit. Most games I will win as level 1, and I've only been level 1 for like a turn or 2. I will actually just sit on my basic Spirit quite often. Then we have Channeling Stone is one of our only 1-cost regalias. It can be handy if you have a really specific hand of like you want to pump out a couple Banner Knights or Phalanx Captain or something like that, or you want to do like an Ace and Protector in second wind but you don't have enough cards in hand. This can get you there. Don't forget you can use a card from memory. You don't necessarily have to use Floating Memory for this card because it still will net you a it can almost be like a 4th draw card in a way. We have Drawn Blade. This is usually only going to be something you go into if games are like really getting stalled out, like if you're playing against Wind Lorraine or something. You don't usually have the time or the resources to go into it. We have Lantern. So this actually fulfills a couple of neat things in the deck. Obviously, this is to slow down some fire decks that rely on, Fire Lorraine with Rending Flames or Erupting Rhapsody and stuff like that. It's not a perfect answer, but it can slow them down enough because you're also an aggro deck to the point that you might just be able to get to your win con first. Normally, I don't think that Nullifying Lantern is just like a safeguard against erupting strategies. That's something that I disagree with a lot of people on. But this also really works in this deck because you're not going to Crux. So people might not expect you to like whip this out in the early game, but it can help slow them down. And I actually will very commonly bring this out against Wind and Fire Lorraine pretty early, just so that they can't do their whole Cruxite Ascension shenanigans and draw 20 cards in one turn and kill you with an Onsoul Banner Knight combo that turn that they go to level 3. So this is something that you probably want to bring out fairly early, actually. And then we run GCR because it's GCR. And then we also run Fire and Wind Resonance Baubles. Water just doesn't see enough play to really warrant a space. I did have a Water Bauble in the side deck and kind of just decided that I didn't need it in there. If you're playing against water, your matchup is probably already good enough that it's just not really necessary. And this is actually what most of my first turns will look like. So obviously turn 1 you have to go Spirit, But usually my first materialization that I can choose to go for, I'd say like 90% of the time is ring. And if I do that, I'm usually following it up with one of these next turn, depending obviously on what I'm playing against. So that was kind of what I was saying earlier, where I'll just sit on my spirit for quite a while. It's usually spirit, next turn, ring, pop, draw, you know, fire bobble, pop, draw, maybe lantern depending on your matchup. And then by that time, you should have a floating memory to go into level 1. We really don't run as many floating memories as a normal Win Lorraine deck, and you kind of just don't need to really go into that fast. Getting the extra draws is really going to help you out with a lot of the strategies that we try to employ in this deck. For the actual main deck itself, we have 4 Phalanx Captain. This is a really fantastic card. Most people will know what this does. This is a solid turn 1 play. You do that a little bit more often than a normal Win Lorraine list because, like I said, we stick on spirit for quite a while. So if you can actually drop one of these turn 1 and then next turn follow it up with like a Swift Recruit, Honorable Vanguard, or Swift Recruit Banner Knight or something, you're gonna start hitting pretty hard, and you're putting a beefy body out there. The 4 health is incredibly relevant in this deck, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but Phalanx Captain turn 1 pass is a pretty solid play because not a lot of decks will actually be able to deal with that. We run 4 Tactful Sergeant. You play this less than the normal Wind Lorraine with Crux version. Don't get, if you're not used to a list like this, you might see this in your hand and like really get focused on it because it's such a strong play in normal Wind Lorraine. But you know, this isn't actually your go-to. This is in here because the card is really strong, but not the card that you really want to be playing. You are an aggressive tempo deck, and this is a good card, but it doesn't really put you that far ahead in tempo. A card that you really want to see and you really want to play is Ace and Protector. This card is just absolutely insane. This is what I felt single-handedly won me the mirror match of the tribal versus tribal because they weren't running Protector, which not too many tribal lists will. But this is a 3/4 body with intercept that you can just play turn 1. We have a couple of different ways to do that, and it's just really insane. I'll go ahead and talk about one of them right now is Squirrel. This combo really threw a lot of people off guard, and it's just you go either if you're going first on the very first turn of the game, you go Squirrel and you have 7 cards in hand, so that puts you down to 6. You put 4 down for a Protector, you bounce the Squirrel, and you just leave this Protector out on turn 1. Having a 3/4 intercept body on turn 1 of the game when your opponent has 0 interaction with it because they can't ignite the soul or Zephyr or do anything like that, that's an incredibly strong move. Like I don't think I've ever lost a game where I did that turn 1. And that's really saying something. I could be wrong, maybe I've lost like 1 game, but I mean, that always just puts you so far ahead, it's insane. And even if you're going second on the first turn of the game, playing Squirrel, and if they have no interaction with you, just swinging 1 with Squirrel, bouncing it, putting it to hand, going Ace and Protector, and if you need to play the Squirrel again and swing that, that's 5 damage. So, you know, in that tribal versus tribal situation where in that matchup, we're just both trying to kill off each other's board because that's the entire game. Like turn 1, we both started with, 7, 8 cards, of course. By turn 2, we were both down to like 5 cards. By turn 3, we were both down to like 3 cards because we were literally just playing cards and swinging and clearing board each time. Like it wasn't a resource build up challenge like most decks are. It was just who can keep that tempo on board. And it was pretty much impossible for him to keep up with a 2-card combo that only needed 5 cards in hand basically, or 6 technically, that could put 5 damage out on board in just a single turn with having nothing on board previously. So that's just a really, really insane combo. This is also, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this card, but it is necessary. I think this is like low-key the strongest card in the deck. This is also your basically auto win against Fire Xander aggro, because you don't really have a good way to clear off their stealth units and stuff. But if you just leave one of these up, now they can't really swing with couriers. They can't swing with a lot of stuff because you're just going to intercept and then retaliate the important ones. But you're going to soak up a ton of damage because of that 4 health body. And you're also going to be clearing off the threats that they need to stick around. So it just helps in so many matchups. And it's just a crazy card, honestly. We're going to talk about another really good card, which is Gildas. If you guys have been watching the channel at all, you know that I sneak Gildas into every deck, it seems like. It's really, really good in here. We're already running that Squirrels, so if you're going second, you can do that, you know, 8-card hand, play squirrels, play Gildas, now your balance combo. And we're also running a card called Second Wind in here. Second Wind, Gildas, Squirrels, and Asin Protector just all really work well together. So, you know, 4-ofs of all of them are just like honestly basically a core part of the deck. And you know, I've done turns where like I've done 14 damage in one turn with Gildas, because if you have this on board and then like you materialize Ornamental Greatsword, buff it by 1. I think I had a Phalanx Captain as well that was buffing it by 1, and then you balance, and then you also do Second Wind, and then so you're swinging twice with it, and you're swinging with it for like 7 damage. I've done that. I've done 14 damage once, but I've done 12 damage multiple times, because it's really not that hard to do if you just go Ornamental Second Wind. Like, that's not asking that much. So it's just a really good card and can help you close out games really fast with that Second Wind combo. Windrider Vanguard is basically just a sort of better version of Gildas. It's a lot more consistent because it's 3 cost like Gildas is, but 2/3 instead of 1/3. And then it has that Vigor, which is actually an incredibly good keyword. It just obviously doesn't have the balance potential that Gildas has, but you're not always going to be able to balance Gildas. So Windrider is a very, very good card in the deck. It just really checks a lot of boxes. It's just that good ally there. And being 3 cost, it can help you balance Gildas. So commonly going Gildas turn 1 and then Windrider Vanguard next turn is going to get you 6 damage on board without taking many cards. 4 Swift Recruit, you know, really solid turn 1 in most of the Lorraine Lorraine decks. It doesn't really change in this deck. If you can go double Swift Recruit, that's a really, really good way to start the game. So, and we also just want a lot of 2-cost bodies to bounce with, like Honorable, or not Honorable Vanguard, Asin Protector and stuff. And then I'm running 2 Honorable Vanguards, obviously a much worse version of Swift Recruit because it has the same exact stats except for it's missing Intercept and it's a norm, so that doesn't help with our Veiling Breeze. But basically, if I could run 6 Swift Recruit, I could, but I can't. So we run 2 Honorable Vanguard to help with that. And like I said, you have a very limited amount of floating memory, so kind of just needed to fit a little bit more in. Then we have 4 Banner Knight. Now, this is a card that I actually kept flip-flopping between 3 and 4 of. And the reason that I'm at 4 currently is basically because it's a 2-drop 1/3. You can't really get that stat line in a lot of other cards, and the fact that this is almost like Gildas level type of bait in a way, because there's a lot of games where I have a Banner Knight out and I have another ally, and I actually really want that other ally to live because I have no intention of going to level 2. Like I said, the deck doesn't really do that much, but they'll kind of overcommit resources to kill off the Banner Knight because people have seen how scary Banner Knight can be in some decks, and so they'll kind of like just suboptimally take their turn to kill it, and it's just a really good feeling when they're doing that on a card that you just didn't really care about that much. And having 4 of means that you can get in those positions where you have 2 of these in your hand, and you can just go like, oh, okay, if I just go level 2, even if I'm not using floating memory and getting rid of my actual memory, I'm just gonna win out the game anyways. So the card's kind of weak if you only see one copy, maybe 2, like at kind of different parts of the game. But if you see multiple of them at the same time, that's where their strength really shines. And like I said, it can kind of just be a bait card as well. The last ally in the deck is the Woodland Squirrels. Again, crazy good card. Don't be greedy with this card. You know, that 0-drop 1/1 means that basically you can get that 1 damage any turn. If you're playing against Rye, I will drop this down turn 1 and just swing with it as many times as I can, because Rye does have a lot of ways to deal with 1 health allies, but if you're taking up, if you're kind of like 1-for-1ing on them, you're winning that resource exchange. And this just basically has a really good Rye matchup because you just drop every single ally you can as fast as you can. So, but against a Lorraine deck or any other sort of deck, you know, you're just going to lose this resource if you drop it and swing for 1. So you really keep it in hand for when you really need that Gildas balance, or when you need to bounce Asin Protector and basically, or when you need to play Asin Protector and you can basically play Asin for just 4 reserve costs essentially, which is really strong. Or if you just need that, you know, like final push. I have even held on to Squirrels, and it ended up being like the last ally I had access to, and just played Squirrels and second winded it and got 4 damage off with the Squirrels. So don't waste your Squirrels. Speaking of second wind, we've mentioned a lot in this video. This is a crazy card, and I am going to take the time to explain an interaction real quick. So you can balance Gildas on a 7-card hand. If you have Gildas on the field and you have 7 cards in your hand, you can declare an attack with Gildas. And then before that damage goes through, there's a couple different windows, but you can say something like, on attack declaration, you put down 3 cards into your memory, you cast the second wind from your hand, and then that's going to use the effect where it restands your character. And then if your class bonus, you're also going to get an additional health, or attack, sorry. And then if you had 7 cards in your hand, like I said earlier, you know, you put 3 down, you have 3 in hand. This is the 7th card, which is going to the graveyard. Now Gildas is balanced. So, you know, now you're basically swinging in for like 10 because you can swing this twice now, and it just gets really, really strong. Another thing to mention is if you have a card like Aeson Protector out and you swing with it, an opponent might want to do something like Zephyr it or, you know, kill it off with a kill spell or something like that. So what I would recommend is if you want to do a second wind combo with something specifically like Aeson, because it's such an attractive target to Zephyr, if you're swinging an attack with Gildas while she's unbalanced, people might not want to Zephyr it right away. But with Aeson, you can swing, you can say anything on attack declaration, not doing the second wind yet. See if they respond with something like a Zephyr or a kill spell or something, and then say, before going to damage calc, you can second wind, restand it, and they will have another additional chance to respond here. So you're not like cheating in the second wind or like, you know, making this unblockable in any way, but you're giving them the opportunity to use resources on it before you commit the resources too. So that's like a really important interaction in this deck that I just wanted to explain a little bit further for people that might not know how that works. So for Fairy Whispers, I kind of love and hate the card in the deck. Like I said, we're tempo. I don't like giving up that tempo, but again, you know, like your Phalanx Captains and your Aeson Protectors are just so important that you do really want to have these in the deck. You know, also, if you have an Aeson in hand already and you glimpse 3 and you see a Squirrels as your 3rd card, you can put a wind card on top to add to hand and then put Squirrels after that. And then if you have like a GCR, you can pop it, draw Squirrels. There's like a lot of neat stuff that you can do with Fairy Whispers. There's also some matchups where you're just desperately going to need like a Veiling Breeze and stuff. So it is just kind of necessary in this deck, but don't get caught up on like chaining Fairy Whispers nonstop if you keep seeing them in the top of the deck, because while it is a strong effect, it's not necessarily what you're trying to do. Then for Veiling Breeze, this is pretty self-explanatory, you know, keeps you alive. We have 4 Reclaim. You know, you're not going to really want to like burn this like you would in a normal Wind Lorraine deck. You know, like it's common for if Wind Lorraine doesn't start with like a Swift Recruit, they put out, you know, a Dungeon Guide or a Banner Knight or something, and they just kind of wait for you to swing into it, and then they reclaim it to hand, and that's their floating memory, right? But the goal of this deck isn't to just like level up with floating memory, because Wind doesn't have free ways to get floating memory. Fire does, right? So they'll do things like Flame Rune Swordsman and Cremation Ritual or Hasty Messenger to get a free floating memory in bin and stuff like that. Wind doesn't really have that. When Wind gets a floating memory in graveyard, it's because they used a card from hand, and we really want to get those massive hands. Like I said, you know, I'll stay on Spirit and I'll go to GCR and then even one of the baubles after that and stuff, and just get this massive hand. So Reclaim in this deck isn't really just to like burn it for floating memory. This is more so that you can like kind of build up a little bit bigger of a board against something like Lorraine, and then when they go to do your sweep turn, you're going to reclaim something and hopefully try to keep some stuff alive and everything like that. So Reclaim is a little bit differently played in this deck than normal Wind decks, just as an FYI. And then we have 4 Favorable Winds and 4 Song of Nurturing, which in a lot of testing and like smaller tournaments, this card has just absolutely blown out some games. Just, you know, basically they went to the Lorraine sweep turn, tried to sweep me for 4 or 5 depending on if I'm playing against Wind and Fire, and I did a Song of Nurturing, and that just was essentially the game almost. You know, obviously this card doesn't win you the game, but at that point there wasn't really anything that they could do, and you know, they might as well scoop. If they're gonna take their entire turn to commit to a sweep and use all of that tempo and some resources to do that, and you basically just say a card that says no for 1 card out of your hand, that's really, really strong, and you keep your board alive, and then you just put that pressure on them that they can't handle. So this is basically just to, yeah, really try to keep your board alive. And, you know, against fire, you're really going to want to try to go for 4 health allies on the board, because then you can Song of Nurturing when they Flame Sweep for 5. They can, you know, do like Banner Knight Flame Sweep and go a little bit slower. If they do that, then you are going to need something like Song of Nurturing and Favorable Winds. So, you know, like it's not just an auto win button against Lorraine. I do think that Win Lorraine specifically is one of the deck's hardest matchups. But yeah, I mean, these cards are really sneaky, and the fact that not many people are really main decking this card or even siding it, just means that people aren't really thinking about it. And, you know, they'll play around a favorable because they know that's a very easy way for Win to get 1 extra health, but they won't always play around Song of Nurturing. So I didn't get to do that too many times in the regionals just because it didn't really naturally come up. It is not a wind card, so it can be a little hard to play or to find in the deck because you can't search off Fairy Whispers and stuff, which is why I'm running the 4 count. It's not good enough to run 4 of, but it is good enough that you need to see it against those Lorraine matchups. You just need to naturally draw into it, which is why we have it at 4. And then I actually main deck 2 Deflecting Edge. So big reason for this is because when you bring out your Sword of Seeking, you know, you'll have that up and you can just have the Deflecting Edges for free. It's really okay for you to just kind of sit on your 1 durability sword in this deck. And this is also just another way to blow out kind of that Lorraine turn, especially if they don't get a sweep. If you just Deflecting Edge something like a Gildus that they're trying to Savage Slash or whatever, you know, that just, it's tempo, right? I would run more, but I just never felt like I needed more. You don't really have the sword too early in the game, and, you know, once you play like 1 of these in a game, you probably don't need any more. So having just 2 is okay. I could see bumping it to 3. So that was the main deck. Let's go ahead and talk about the side. Against Rye, like I said, you kind of just have this like play everything from your hand and try to kill them as fast as you can. So we basically side into the full play set of Honorable Vanguard since we main 2, and then we do 2 Inspiring Calls as well. I would do 4, but actually I guess that's something I can talk about right now. We run 4 Hurricane Sweeps, and this is your Lorraine sideboard card basically, but I felt like 4 was too many. I think that this is the side deck that I would be going for in the future, is 2 Honorable Vanguards, 3 Inspiring Call, and 3 Hurricane Sweep, because even in the matchups that I wanted Hurricane Sweep, I actually ended up only siding in 3. In those Lorraine matchups, you're going to want to side out the Honorable Vanguards because 2 health is too dinky, and if you summon it against them, they're just going to let it sit on the board until they do their sweep turn. And so it doesn't really, like, Honorable's not that good in that matchup, so I would side out 2 Honorable and then usually, like, you know, just 1 extra card that you don't really care about, whatever it is. Sometimes I would take out like a Song of Nurturing if they had already seen it in game 1 and I can't really get that surprise factor on them again. But yeah, so I think 3 sweeps, 3 calls, and 3 vanguards, or 2 vanguards is a good count there. Sweep for the Lorraine matchups and, you know, the Xander matchups and stuff like that, the Fire Xander matchups, and then Inspiring Call and Honorable Vanguard against those Rye matchups, because you actually do have a really good time against Rye. I'll briefly talk about all the matchups, even though I've mentioned most of them. So Rye, it's honestly almost an auto win, and one of the biggest reasons why I like the deck so much. Rye's really powerful right now, and I wanted to play a deck at these big events that had a really good time against it. And with how much pressure you can put down there, and with how little interaction they have with the board in the early state, you just kind of win. You know, Fire can bring in a lot of interaction with like Focus Flames and all that kind of stuff, but to be honest, if they're bringing in those cards and using their tempo and cards in hand to do that, you're just going to win the game a little slower. But since they're prolonging the game but losing resources and tempos in that effort to do that, I've never had them like kill off enough of my board and then still have enough resources left over to pop off. I will just eventually draw more allies and kill them that way. So Fire Aggro Xander is almost an auto win as well. You really want to see your Ace and Protector in that matchup, and you want to side in the Hurricane Sweeps. If you don't see Ace and Protector, you can lose for sure, especially if they just draw really well. So dig for those with Fairy Whispers and such, and make sure that you're leaving those active instead of swinging at them. Fire Lorraine, it feels like a very 50-50. You really have to hold on to your Song of Nurturings there if you see those, and be a little patient with them. Don't overcommit and let them get too many resources and kill off your win con by a flame sweep. And, you know, Deflecting Edge is a really good card in that matchup too. If you don't have the time to go into a Spurn to Ash, you can just kind of keep Deflecting Edge up as, or sorry, if you don't have time to go into Lantern, you can keep a Deflecting Edge up kind of as like a pseudo Lantern, because if they try to go for a really huge Rending Flames attack, you can at least Deflecting Edge to prevent 6 of that damage. So a really good interaction there, especially since not too many Lorraine lists are maining Deflecting Edge right now, I feel like. And then Wind Lorraine, like I said, is kind of your worst matchup because you have to treat it a little bit like Fire Lorraine, where you can't overcommit. You kind of have to like wait out that sweep turn and make sure that they don't get too much value there. But if you wait too long, because so many of them are playing Onsol and just like have such a good capability of getting a huge hand, you know, if you delay that game too long, it's just going to get to a point in the game where they can resource maximize better than you can, and you're just going to slowly get edge out of that game. So but yeah, that's everything that I could think to share with you. I know it's a little bit longer of a deck profile, but because this was a higher level event and, you know, there's more regionals coming up and everything, I wanted to really give a full detailed description of the deck, because a lot of people actually mentioned that at the Florida regionals. They said that they were really appreciative that we don't just flash a picture up there and say run these cards, and they found a lot of the descriptions very helpful. So if you guys like the deck, please, you know, like, subscribe, comment, and give us as much feedback as you can, because we're really trying to pump out that content there and you know, provide that good quality content at the same time. So until next time, peace.